The sea had a tired look the morning Vestris cleared New York, steel gray with a low swell rubbing paint with salt. She was not a glamorous liner, not one of the postcard greyhounds, but a hard-working ship of the Lamport and Holt line, bound for the River Plate with cargo stacked deep and a passenger list of tourists, emigrants, and children pressing noses to the glass as the tugs fell away. On the pier, the last handkerchiefs fluttered, small white birds against a November sky. By nightfall, the ship was on her own, her screws thudding a patient rhythm under the decks. It arrived as a feeling, a groan in the hull, a list that would not even out, a dampness that crept. Cargo had come late and been forced aboard quickly. Hatches were battened in a hurry. A winter storm was sliding down the coast. Vestris pushed anyway, black water lifting to meet her bow and slamming back under the plates. Across the next day, the list grew familiar enough to ignore, then too stubborn to deny. Pictures hung at angles, cups slid, marbles rolled the same way. The crew worked pumps and posted buckets, the way sailors do when information speaks in drips. Officers walked the decks counting the seconds between waves, pretending the ship would answer reason. By Sunday night, the weather had sharpened. Winds rose in steps. Green water came aboard and tried door latches. Some passengers were told to stay in cabins, others to keep warm in public rooms. It sounded like care and acted like control. Rumor overtook the passageways, a leak forward, cargo adrift, coal shifting, a door that dithered. Above it all, the ship kept shouldering on, patient and stubborn, proud the way old machines are before they fail. On Monday morning, November 12th, the list deepened to starboard until it was an attitude, not a motion. Vestris showed more port to the sky and less starboard to the sea, and the sea studied the difference. Wireless calls went out, first cautious, then urgent. Too late, survivors would say. Too late, investigators would echo. The delayed order to prepare boats met swollen wood and davits that had not loved grease in months. Men strained at metal. Some boats were slung out crooked. Some kissed the water and filled at once. That morning, the sea gave no assurances at all. A lifeboat dropped and cracked like a plate. Another scraped down the side, chewing itself into boards. Women cried, not because they were faint, but because the arithmetic had turned brutal, and everybody could count. On the promenade, a boy clutched a cork lifebelt and looked at his mother. A steward tried to tie a bowline, made half hitches, untied them with his teeth, and tried again. The list increased by degrees, and with it the angle of choice. How far you could step and not slide, how long a screw could keep bite when it spent more time in air than in water. Rescue was coming, but rescue has distance and a clock. Ships that turned toward Vestris ran into the same weather that had undone her. Seas were square, signal lamps stabbed at gray. In the boats that survived the drop, men bailed with hats and hands and swore at sloshing that never seemed to shrink. On slanted decks, passengers waited for instructions that arrived late or not at all. Officers shouted across wind that wiped words away. Some women were ordered into boats without their husbands. Some refused and clung to sleeves that already knew this was the last sleeve. When she went with the privacy of a large animal that chooses its own ground. The sea crawled up the promenade and over the windows. People felt the vibration change, from the pulse of an engine to the shiver of a hull. The final heave rolled her onto her side. The ocean stepped in as if waiting at the door. An air pocket boomed under the decks. A mast slid into water with the slow elegance of a falling cathedral. In the boats and on the rafts, survivors watched a shape they had slept inside become silhouette, and then subtraction. They were alone. Cold found the smallest parts of them first. Salt stung the places they did not think salt could reach. An hour stretched, then another. The rescue ships arrived by degrees, smoke smudges on the horizon, then hulls with blackened bows, then faces under oilskins leaning over rails, throwing lines. Some boats came in whole, some came in pieces with people attached. A sailor lifted a child, holding ribs with care. Another hauled a woman up by the back of her coat and did not apologize for the grip. Names were shouted and then, because shouting wasted breath, written on lists with pencils gone soft. News ran ahead to the cities. Wireless operators told their captains, who told their owners, who told reporters. By night, the front pages were ready. Liner down, women and children lost, delays alleged. In New York, waiting rooms filled with those who had waved from the pier a day and a half before. They stared at a board of slips, saved, missing, saved. The inquiries began before the dead were counted. American officials convened a hearing. British authorities did the same. Testimony painted a ship with a load too high, ports not dogged, crew indifferent to drills. Passengers spoke about officers who could not explain the plan because there was no plan, about boats overloaded on one side while the other davits still sulked on their pins. The company sent its best suits, and the suits nodded gravely, and the stenographers took it all down. Numbers arrived, how many aboard, how many lost, how long between the first call and the last. Behind every number, a chair pulled up to a breakfast table that would cool untouched. Vestris became more than a wreck, a verdict. Editors called her a scandal. Naval architects traced lines on paper and muttered about metacentric height and free surface effect, how water can push a ship past the point she can push back. Lifeboatmen talked about falls, chocks, and rust. Mariners shook their heads. The sea is not patient with hesitation, and the old rule, get boats away early, had been set aside. From the hearings came changes that looked like paperwork and sounded like mercy. Boats would be swung out before trouble. Drills would be drills, not theater. Passenger counts would be reconciled by names. Hull openings would be logged and checked. Wireless men would have authority to call help without asking owners. None of it brought back women whose last sight was white water level with a rail. But it promised that the next captain who hesitated would have rules to lean on instead of pride. In the years after, the sea sloughed over the exact coordinates, smoothing the place where Vestris settled. Currents braided her with silt. Fish learned her corridors. On shore, a few names became family stories. A boy kept a cork life belt, then put it in a dark closet. A steward who survived with rope burns across his palms made knots in his sleep, fingers moving against the sheet, until his wife took his hands and whispered him quiet. Read the lists, and you feel the weight of choices. Heads of department who delayed, crew who tried and failed, or failed to try, passengers who trusted too long, and those who jumped too soon, ships at the edge of weather, pushing in. The loss of Vestris is not one lesson, but many, all about time, how minutes become verdicts. It asks who may spend minutes for others. It asks who is allowed to say, now. Stand on a winter pier and watch a working ship go. You will see the same small details. A list that looks ordinary, a hatch that looks closed, a line that looks secure. Somewhere offshore, a swell will lift and set, waiting for the moment when attention breaks. That is the gap where disasters grow. That is where Vestris lives, still teaching in the only language the ocean respects: consequence. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.